You're listening to Phoenix FM, community radio for Dublin 15.
This programme is a recording and the Phoenix FM text line is currently closed. If you wish to comment on this programme, email info@phoenixfm.ie and your comments will be passed to the programme makers.
Okay, everybody, it is Monday night here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. This is the WViDesk International Desk, and I am joined by WViDesk's Editor-in-Chief, Mr. Adam Martin. How are things, man?
I'm surprised we're doing this because I was not expecting you. I thought you were just done with wrestling talk and podcasting. I thought you were just done with it.
Yeah, I kind of was. But I don't know. It's like, you know, when you get to a point where you're just you step away from something and then you need to kind of like take a bit of time for yourself and kind of reorientate everything, and then you go back into it. It's I think we've all had that point, Adam, where we do walk away from it and then we kind of come back. Like even with yourself, you had it with the rest of your VIP area, and then even Wrestling News Live and that, when they kind of finished and you're like, well, do I still want to do this? I think like a structured approach that is more in line what you want to do is better than just doing something for the sake of it, like what you do in Wrestling and Wrestview Live on Facebook, where it's not every week, it's every couple of pay-per-views or whenever you feel like it. I think that's really cool.
It's been every like 2 weeks though lately because there's been so many pay-per-views from the WWE mainly, and then there's going to be an Impact. It's an Impact Wrestling show. It's not TNA's dead, so it's not TNA, even though people want to call it TNA. But we've well, no, I know exactly what you're talking about because I did Wrestling News Live from 2002 all the way up until 2008 or 9, and then we called it a day. And then right as that ended, I started doing a podcast with my brother about mixed martial arts. I did that for almost a year with him, and then we brought Wrestling News Live back, and that lasted through 2010. And then there was the parting of the ways, the VIP section starting up, and then I did the VIP section till like 2013, and then 2014 we created the Train Adam show, and now that show's dead, and I just do WrestleView Live now with Doug whenever there's a pay-per-view. But it's been I haven't really ever taken a break. I mean, there's been lulls and there's been like stopgaps with shows and stuff, but there was a little bit of a break after the VIP section ended when I didn't do anything for probably like 5 or 6 months, and then we started doing stuff with when I started doing stuff with Trey again. But it does get a little and plus, you know, I think you've talked about this in your shows too, of there's just too much podcasts about wrestling, especially with how many wrestlers have a podcast now, and it's really interesting to me because for 10 years ago, it was just like, like who would want to do a show about wrestling, or who would want to have a radio show or a podcast? And like now all these wrestlers do, and it was interesting to see the rise in popularity of podcasting, especially in the comedy world, because I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, but now like almost every comedian has a podcast now, which is a little annoying. And now every wrestler has a podcast, and they're still popping up. Like Raven just started a podcast, and Shane Douglas just started a podcast, and at one point Ric Flair was doing it, and then he fizzled out. But I think I mentioned this on the Train Adam Show Facebook page, which we still keep that alive, even though the show itself is dead. But Shane Helms was doing an interview, I think, with Sam Roberts and he was many years ago. I think it was like 2010. He was starting to do his Highway to Helms show, where he was doing video and podcasting. And he said when Steve Austin called him and started asking him for advice on podcasting, he knew it was time to basically pack it in and call it a day. And it's very oversaturated. So I do like that I get to come on and do shows with Doug, but we don't do it every single week. But it's been like every other week now because of how many pay-per-views they've been producing in the summertime.
You see, like even when I was thinking about, I kind of found myself in a different position than that, because obviously this is on Phoenix FM. I have a slot. to fill.
Yeah, a legitimate slot.
Yeah, so it was kind of like they were getting repeats, and it was like, look, I don't want to do the Friday show anymore. I don't want to do Saturday. I just want to kind of, because that's too much content to put out, particularly when, as you said, it's oversaturated. So the choice was either stop doing it or, you know, kind of change the format a bit, you know. So it's like, it's great I get to talk with you, Adam. I haven't talked to you in a while.
I know it's been a long time.
It has been. It's far too long. I just realized that, like, one of the times that I actually really enjoyed doing the show was when I was talking with people in the kind of wrestling media, but also in the wider sphere of things. And they were all kind of patched together here and there when I was doing the show with Gary, and it was sometimes 3 or 4 shows are going out a week. So then I just realized, just take the bits that I like and package them together there. So, you know, I get DVDs sent to me from WWE Home Video. I'm going to do DVD reviews, interviews, all that kind of stuff. So it's more of a case of adjusting the things that you talk about rather than just being angry or upset and just being a voice on an oversaturated market. You know, I think what you and Doug do is very unique because it's in my regular diet of wrestling podcasts that I listen to. But you do have either the really well researched and fun stuff, or you have the really, really annoyed YouTube videos. And both are fun, but you kind of have to pick which one you want to invest your time into. And as you said, wrestlers now are kind of dominating the podcast scene, as in like the week to week kind of stuff. So it's kind of better to just reassess and go, right, let's talk about other stuff inside the wrestling kind of Zeitgeist kind of thing. It's actually very much what happened with gaming when you look at it, when you think back. You know, a couple of years ago, nobody would even think that it was important to stream games or to review games on the internet. And then it became a huge business, and now gaming is like the second most popular thing on YouTube, if not the most popular thing on YouTube.
Yeah, I got sucked into it. I mean, it's I mean, before it was like when a game would come out, you would go see like, well, what does IGN think, or what does like GameSpot think, or PC Gamer, and now it's I'll follow people on YouTube that are like very popular gamers, and I'll kind of see what they think. Like, there's a guy in the UK called Jack Frags that I always watch his stuff. So if I'm going to get into a game, I see, well, what does Jack think? And then there's another goofy guy named Cartoons who does a bunch of videos, and he'll actually have game creators send him a copy of the game, and then he'll play it and give his thoughts and goof around. So you're right, it totally has. And then obviously, the popularity of Twitch. People are now streaming directly live to YouTube now for gaming, so that's kind of become a new thing in the last 6 months. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's even, you can see the popularity with wrestling on YouTube as well. I mean, that's why now when we do WrestleView Live, we only stream live to YouTube. For a while, we were only streaming live to Facebook. And then we noticed, what a bigger audience we could build on YouTube versus Facebook. And it's just really interesting to see. I mean, you have people literally sitting there filming themselves watching an entire, pay-per-view, or they'll come on right after a pay-per-view like we do and give some quick thoughts. But we generally just like to react to it versus, this is how they should have done it, Darragh, and get all angry and mad and stuff. Because
there's no fun in that.
Really, that's the only way you can watch wrestling. I mean, I can't imagine watching. I mean, I know there's people that are fans and they definitely want to see something. Personally, they want an attachment, and I get that. But I can't imagine just like continuing to watch over and over again because they didn't do what you want them to do. And I prefer to just kind of say like, it's the same way people cover sports. I mean, if I had to make another comparison is, you don't see guys talking heads going on ESPN or Fox Sports and saying, well, this is what, the Cowboys should have done in this game. They just say, well, like, this is what happened, and here's the mistake that was made, or here was the correct decision that was made. They're just reacting to reality. And I just kind of wish wrestling fans would just react and hope for the best, but instead they fixate on fantasy booking and how they think things should be done, and this is why the WWE is terrible. And I don't always agree with everything the WWE does, because you'll hear me when I don't agree with it. I'll be very vocal about it and very honest, and I'll be brutally honest, but at the same time, though, I just don't see the point in coming on a podcast and just being angry for an hour or two, and it doesn't accomplish anything to be that angry, because then you you sound really childish when you get that angry, especially when I hear like grown adults, like 20, like guys that are like 20 or 30 years older than me that do the same thing I do. And they just sound like babies. They sound like big whiny babies. And it's very off-putting when I hear that. So a lot of the times when I do sample all the wrestling shows, which isn't many, but when I do, and I start to hear the whiny baby stuff, I just click it right off because I'm just not interested in that kind of approach to, analyzing wrestling or discussing wrestling. It should just be a fun discussion, but a lot of people choose to take it very, very seriously, and I've never understood that.
I think it's a mix of several different things, but that is kind of like the template that a lot of people do follow. I don't even think it is a template. I just think it's the most natural kind of slot to fit into. And the problem with it is when you live in that mindset, you get incredibly negative. And when you get incredibly negative, it stops becoming fun. And when something isn't fun, don't do it. And that's kind of how I see most things, other than work, because you have to work, and so work isn't fun sometimes. But when it's when it gets to like a hobby, be it music, be it podcasting, be it anything like that, if it's not fun, don't do it. And if you can't find some sort of enjoyment out of it, then there's just absolutely no point. And for me, I was kind of just thinking this, like, well, Bryn was really busy. He just finished his degree. I'm really busy. I just finished my degree. And we're like, well, look, we're programming all the time. We haven't got time to watch 8 hours of wrestling that we're not really enjoying, and we're not finding a different way to be able to cover it. And it just became to a point where it was like, right, take a break, reassess. Then the website went down. I was just like, okay, look, I'm going to just put it off for a while. I'll just kind of pull it to the side there. I kind of sidebar for a while. And the main thing that kind of got me back into covering wrestling or wanting to do a podcast again was, in reality, as I said, I had the slot there, but also it was, I can build websites now. There's a place to host the show.
Which is not an easy thing to learn and to do, so I give you credit for that.
Thank you, sir. But no, it was, there's literally like an archive of shows there which I'm able to build up, and it's just a place to host it and hold it there, so it's not just going on. Like, some guys will come on and do a show, and I never understood it, particularly on FM radio. They'll do a show and they'll just be happy with it just to disappear. For me, I think that it's like, oh yeah, we recorded it for the station or whatever, but then it's gone. It's like, well, that's kind of weird. I just don't understand that. So once there was no place really to, and I know obviously, Adam, you've always opened up your SoundCloud and stuff like that as well, for us, which I've always greatly appreciated. But it's when you don't have a place to host it yourself, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll wait and see what happens. And the stars just kind of aligned where the slot was there. I had the skills to be able to build a site, and then it was just like, okay, let's just do it again. And then it was just a case of seeing, well, what do I want to cover. So it is a case of just talking with people, having conversations about wrestling or about whatever when it's in a fun kind of environment. And then it's just kind of building on that. So some weeks are going to be different than others. Some weeks are going to be more standard than others. But what I want to do is, it's kind of, for anyone who's been listening to the show for, what, six years now in some way. 6 years, that's crazy. But, there's always been the review side of it. There's always been the kind of piecemeal coverage. And then there's been the in-depth coverage and the interviews and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much, An hour is a short time to fit a lot into, but 3 hours is a lot to fit very little into, if you know what I mean. It's a lot
stretch. I mean, look at Raw every week. I mean,
exactly. That's exactly it. And what I wanted to do, I didn't want to do 3 hours where it was mostly repeats or whatever. I'm happy to just do an hour and have as good solid content. So it is pretty much what you said. It's the Raw analogy. It's kind of stripping it back just to being what I always wanted the show to kind of be. And now it was just the stars aligned. So that's why I kind of came back. It was more like behind the scenes kind of thing. It was more like I met the station manager, and it was kind of like, Darragh, do you want to do the show? And I was just like, do I want to do the show? Because they were kind of happy enough just to go on with repeats or whatever, and it was kind of just like, yeah, okay, I'll do the show again. I just need to kind of find out, why do I like wrestling? why do I like why do I like podcasting, and it was kind of just all came from there. So
well, you're adjusting to how we consume wrestling now, because think about 10 years ago how you consumed wrestling in 2007 versus how you do it now, and it's totally different. I mean, there's no pay-per-view model. There's way more television content now than there was 10 years ago. There's social media content. There's now a full-fledged network with every single pay-per-view you can even imagine, not to mention TV shows, not to mention documentaries, specials. There's just so much more content that is out there now than there was 10 years ago. So, 10 years ago, you could sit here. Even back then, the internet was still beginning to evolve. Not everybody had broadband internet.
Yeah, that's true.
Podcasting was a thing, but it wasn't quite at the level that it is now. So it's a different. I mean, I think we're all adjusting to it. I'm still adjusting to it. I mean, I know I've adjusted to the last 3 years now. I've gone off satellite. I've gone off cable. The only way I consume WWE content is either through the network or if I watch Raw or SmackDown on Hulu, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I've also had to kind of readjust how even I consume content and how I do it on my time. So we're all adjusting. We're all trying to figure this thing out, and I totally get where you're coming from, because everybody gets completely burned out. But I think even more so now, it's easier to get burned out on wrestling because there's just so much coming at you. And just think about just the stuff the WWE provides by itself. That's not counting all the other countless, potential wrestling content you could get from, independent promotions or Impact or from New Japan. So there's just, Ring of Honor. There's so much out there right now that it's a good time to be a wrestling fan, but it's also, very overwhelming at the same time.
I think it's a good time to be a new wrestling fan. As in, there isn't that adjustment period. Like, if you just came straight into this world where it's wrestling and you like wrestling, literally you can watch whatever you want. Like, you could, Adam, we could literally sit and watch wrestling uninterrupted for probably 6 months.
Maybe.
If no new wrestling, let's say all wrestling stopped now, uninterrupted, we could probably watch it for 6 months to 8 months. Straight.
That is a weird thought, though, too, that even if the evil WWE empire was to just implode one day, there would still be something out there.
Exactly.
But it would be so like even the WWE struggles to be mainstream right now.
Yeah.
And which is weird, because like it's funny how like wrestling fans want it to be mainstream, but then when it does become mainstream, they're like, oh, that's so gross. So it's such a weird dichotomy how it's like they want people to know about it, but then when it becomes too known, like how big it got in the Attitude Era, people got so annoyed at how overly saturated and how overly popular it got. But it would be weird to think about if you were just to take the WWE, like just all that content they provide, the network's gone, everything's gone. And what would you have left? Like a fledgling Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor being sustained only through Sinclair Broadcasting. You'd have New Japan, which is actually doing pretty well right now. And they're doing a couple shows next weekend, actually, in I think Los Angeles is where they're doing it.
Yes.
They're going to start testing the American market a little bit, which I think is a good move. But it would be kind of weird if you were new and then all of a sudden one of them just kind of, because even though WWE has the overwhelming market share, God, if you think wrestling's not popular now, just imagine if the WWE went away.
Yeah. Like, it is one of those things where, like, even still, well, the reality is WWE, most people still call the WWE WWF.
Yeah.
Still, to this day. I had somebody call it WWF literally yesterday. So, like, that's how niche it still is, but then it's not. You have, like, this niche product that people still watch, people still have investment in, but then to the mainstream, you're right, when it was part of the mainstream, it was WWF, it was in the Attitude Era, and people still hang on to that. And I think the mistake, going back to why people have such that it's not a weird investment, it's an understandable investment, why people still have that investment with it is because that's when it was the mainstream. And I figured that out, it was kind of like, this was a keystone of not only their childhood, but of popular culture at the time, where like you turn on WWE, you turn on Raw, and there were signs for The Simpsons and for South Park and all that kind of stuff. And all those things kind of meshed in together. So you had your block of programming, you had your feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker, but at the same time you were watching The Simpsons, and then you had the all that kind of stuff meshing together. And I think the problem that a lot of people have from that time period, and I include myself in that as well, when you get emotionally invested in something, is that you don't understand that things change. And a lot of people from that time period who are fans then, when wrestling changed into what it is now, where it is not just one thing, it's a brand that transcends TV. It goes to social media, it's online, but it's not mainstream. It's not the same thing. So then when it tries to become mainstream, people are like, ooh, what's that? Because the
talk
main
to somebody too that like wants it to go back to the way it was. Like it's almost like they're just sitting and waiting in a corner, like, oh, I bet in like 5 years, Darragh, they're gonna start, cursing and showing boobs, and they're just kind of like waiting for it to revert back to how it was in like 1998, 1999, and it's just like
it's not gonna happen.
No, it's really not. I mean, as long as the WWE can successfully market to children and get successful licensing deals off that, and as long as people are still subscribing to the network at the rate at which they are, it's not going to, I mean, obviously they're going to introduce new characters, they'll have, new storylines and stuff, but this idea that like, Stone Cold Steve Austin's going to come out on like a Zamboni and jump over the ring and take out, Vince McMahon, it's just like, man, like the whole purpose of wrestling is to, and even I've had to kind of swallow this too. Like I thought the stuff, like when people were going crazy over the is it Will Ospreay and Ricochet, I think those two dudes, they were going crazy over all these matches that they were having the last year in Japan, and I thought it was stupid. It looked like gymnastics. It didn't even look like wrestling. It almost like, I didn't even think that was pro wrestling. Like, yes, they were in a wrestling ring, but it was so overly choreographed that it looked like they were almost like practicing things for a movie, and then someone was going to go in and edit the shots so that congruently it fit together quickly and there wasn't any like pauses or breaks. But at the same time, though, I have to recognize that a lot of people thought that that was really, really cool, and they thought that that was innovative and something different and something they've never seen before. I thought it was stupid, but just because I thought it was stupid doesn't mean that everybody thought it was stupid. And a lot of people were into that match and are into that presentation and want to see that in the WWE, and we're getting hints of it with the critique of the dive, which I'm sure you saw, of Randy Orton making fun of the typical independent wrestler, and Rip Rogers put out like a how-to if you're going to have an independent wrestling match in 2017, and he's not wrong because it's what a lot of them do, but it's like a successful formula that like the Young Bucks do, but the Young Bucks are selling a bunch of t-shirts and they're getting a bunch of YouTube views with their Elite show. So even though I think it's stupid, people seem to like it. So I've had to kind of understand that too, that just because I look at something and go like, ugh, like it doesn't mean it's going to be, it's just evolution. Things evolve and wrestling's going to evolve. And maybe at some point in a couple of years, the match that we saw between Ricochet and Will Ospreay could be the norm in the WWE or somewhere else. I don't know.
Well, see, Adam, that's the thing. Like, there is this weird connection, and it's there, and they seem to touch off each other, but never actually understand what's going on. When WWE was in during the Attitude Era, it was mimicking popular culture. What was popular then, it was trying to tap into that, millennial kind of not pre-millennial mindset kind of thing. If WWE was to tap into the popular culture now, people would be incredibly annoyed, and that's what's happening. Sure, when even going back a couple of years ago, when what's your one's face called from that horrible show? Snooki.
Which
that
show?
Was it. Snooki. Yes.
Snooki. Oh, yeah. Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore. That
sure.
was it. That was WWE trying to go into the mainstream. That was them trying to mimic popular culture, and it just failed epically. So for everyone who's saying,
I didn't think that one failed because all they did was used it at WrestleMania. I thought it was more awkward when they would bring somebody in, like when they brought in Kevin Federline. Like there was no payoff with that. It was just like at the time he was in the headlines, so they brought him in and John Cena gave him an FU and then it was done. But or an AA, sorry.
But he beat John Cena, remember?
He did, but it was very random when they did it. They were just more like saw him in the headlines and they brought him in. Whereas with like Snooki, Like that was like WrestleMania was designed for celebrities. Like that's the one thing wrestling fans for some reason decided just like conveniently forget. Like that was an entire show built off of celebrities and celebrity involvement. So to have a celebrity, which yes, you could use that term loosely with Snooki, and I think even she would admit that she was a reality TV star.
Yeah.
But it made sense to use her in that capacity to WrestleMania. But I'll agree with you when they do other stuff. Like I heard they're going to try to bring in LeVar Ball, who's the father of Lonzo Ball, who's this. I don't follow the NBA very closely anymore, so by no means should I even be really talking about this. But I saw something that he's been supposedly talking with the WWE, and he's just known for trolling people on ESPN and other sports channels because of his kids are good at basketball, and they're just trying to, and the Raw's in Los Angeles, and they might like capitalize on this. So that's when it starts to feel silly, where they just try to get like, the Sports Center highlight, even though they're totally in bed with ESPN now, which is really, really strange. But it is weird though when they do kind of ham-fist in popular culture stuff when they don't really need to.
Yeah, and it's something that I wish WWE fans would understand, and I wish WWE would stop doing, because on one hand it's like they have the glory, quote unquote, the glory period of the Attitude Era, and people think that's what it. It's like you have this, and it's going to lead to this, and but the amount of mental gymnastics they have to do to get to that point is insane. Rather than just thinking if they use the same formula, it's going to get a different result because it's 20 years ago.
Yeah, you can't keep doing the same stuff. And it felt ham-fisted when they did the guest stars for Raw. Like I thought that after a while that started to get real old fast. But like it just wasn't good. And I think they saw that and they went, okay, let's cool this down a little bit and stop doing this. But the other obstacle now is just, too much content on Monday night, which I never thought I would say, but it's just way too much. It's just it's life taxing. Like I feel bad for Mike Tedesco at times when he has to recap that show for us on WrestleView, but there's a lot of issues more with that.
But the thing about it is, Adam, when you put it through that lens, it all makes sense. And that's the realization I had. WWE are giving people what they want. That's the crazy thing. WWE are doing exactly what people want. Integration with popular culture kind of thing. Or at least they have in the past. No, they're not doing it now, but they did for the past, 2009, 2011, 2010, 2012, 2014, 15, 16. Up until 2015, that's when they were really kind of hammering the integration with popular culture kind of thing, and it failed. So WWE now are doing their own kind of thing where they might flirt with popular culture, but they don't actually integrate it. And that's what we need to realize, where I'm not saying we, but as a collective, WWE, if they give you what you want, it's going to be, the guest host kind of thing, the guest GM, Donald Trump showing up at WrestleMania, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty much actually how Impact are marketing their Slammiversary show, because they're now trying to copy what WWE did a few years ago with their marketing strategy tactic. It's not good, and I think you're right, Adam. But
it's a good segue. I like that. That's what you did there.
Yes. But that's how I feel, and that's what I feel. The little break did for me, Adam. It kind of like reset everything. Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, okay. If we step away, we get to see the bigger picture here, and it was good, But I think my advice to anybody who who is fed up with wrestling or angry all the time about wrestling: stop watching for a while. Go outside, and then go outside. Do other things, and then come back, and then you'll be like, "Oh, okay, it's just a TV show."
Or channel that anger into something that would like benefit you, like exercise. Like hit a heavy bag or run or use a kettlebell or use free weights or something. Like take that anger and put it towards something that will actually benefit you instead of just like eating food and going on Facebook and complaining all day. Like just think about different ways you could better yourself as a human being, and then you'll be better.
Exactly. And it's better for the mental health kind of thing as well, because at the end of the day, we love wrestling, and that's where it comes from. But you need to understand that like wrestling is a TV show, it's a business, and there are companies out there that will cater to that kind of thing. They've always been there. But as far as what WWE is going to do, WWE tried to give you what people want, and it just didn't keep up. And it's one hand watching the other, and they don't get anywhere. So what I'd say is that's what the future of this show is going to be as well. It's going to just kind of be a much more grounded kind of approach, talking with people in the industry, reviewing different things, and just kind of being more chill about everything, because I'm nearly 30. You don't need to be angry about everything all the time. What's the point in that?
I agree. Thumbs up for me, man. I totally agree.
Okay, so let's talk about Slammiversary real quick. This is, to my knowledge, the first Impact Slammiversary. It's no longer TNA Impact Slammiversary. Yeah. And man, it's right away the main event is not something I want to see. I never really rated Lashley as a performer in any way. There's an interview which I'll put up on the site next week before the show, and I have to say, he's the worst interview I've ever had in my life.
Well, yeah, he's just a very quiet person. So
yeah.
I mean, in the charisma department, I even think he would admit this. He's not much, but I like the way honestly, dude, like if they're gonna have anybody walk around as a world champion, he's probably the dude you want to go with right now. Like they were struggling, and they were, they were playing hot potato. Like they had Eddie Edwards as champion. Like that made no sense for a while.
Weird. That was weird.
So yeah, I'd like, yes, Lashley has a lot, or Bobby has a lot to be desired when it comes to the microphone, but from a physical standpoint and from a wrestling standpoint, he's pretty competent in the ring still.
Yes.
He's very believable as a champion, and that's why he's in the position, that you see him in right now with this company.
Yeah, and I think, they have Alberto Del Rio or El Patron there, but the thing about it is like, as you said, he's, for all intents and purposes, they're a homegrown guy. He's had a much more successful career there than he did in WWE, and he's been a much more valuable asset for them than he was in WWE. But the thing about it is, and this is, they changed the name they changed the name, but then they did the exact same TNA kind of stuff, and that's playing off the WWE Battle of the Billionaires kind of thing, where Donald Trump was in Lashley's corner at WrestleMania 23, and I don't know why. I don't know why they would go back to that. Like, they've cut ties completely from what they were, and the show's got pretty good. It's decent. It seems to have some sort of cohesion now, at least. But why even try? Like I as I said, the competitors in the match doesn't do anything for me, but I do like the fact that they're unifying the belts. They're unifying the Global Force Wrestling Championship, and they're unifying the Impact Championship. That's enough of a story in itself. It seems like, hey, look, we're as big as WWE. We can get Donald Trump here. It's like, yes, you can get the president to show up at your wrestling show.
Yeah, he is not coming to Universal Studios in 2 weeks.
It's like, what? It's just so lame.
Yeah, and I sent a text to somebody who's a higher up person, and people that know my working relationships can probably guess who this is. But I voiced I've been voicing displeasure on things I see, and sometimes it's taken in, and other times it's ignored, and it is what it is either way. But the one thing I continue to hear from the people that are there now versus who was there, a year ago is there's frustration with having to take over something that they had nothing to do with. So they're kind of working with the strategy. I almost pulled a George W. Bush there. I was like the joke, strategy instead of strategy. But imagine imagine buying a house and like 30-40% of it gets moved out, but then you're stuck with the rest, and you have to kind of just work with it and make it. And the first obvious glaring issue is Pop TV. I mean, it just you're lucky if that show averages over 300,000 people a week. It's been kind of ticking up here and there, and it goes up and down, but there's not a lot of traction there from a cable television standpoint. They've diverted and spent more money and more effort and more time into making a better website, making their social media better. They've gotten way more aggressive on YouTube, way more aggressive on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So that aspect, they've done good with that. But at the end of the day, though, they had a bunch of missteps with contracts. They let Drew McIntyre leave. They let the Hardys leave. They let a lot of people just kind of peace out. A lot of women's wrestlers leave. So they're restructuring. They've let go recently, some producers. They let go Shane Helms and Al Snow and Pat Kenny, who was Simon Diamond in ECW. So it's the Jeff Jarrett regime coming back. I mean, you have Scott D'Amore back in the fold. You have Dutch Mantell back in the fold. You have a lot of people that, Jeremy Borash is much more influential now than maybe he was prior in the old regime.
Yeah.
You still have a couple hangers on, like John Gaburek is still there.
Sure,
there's a couple different people.
You can feel it. Like, just even look, if you look at the match card, you know who's booking that show. You know how it feels.
Oh yeah, obviously, absolutely, yeah. And I think they're trying. I guess I give them credit. They're trying, but I don't really see this regime. And obviously, I think the stuff with the Global Force Wrestling stuff is just so stupid being integrated into this. And I told them that. I was asked for an opinion, and I said it was incredibly stupid and a waste of their time, and they did not. That opinion was not well received, but it's true.
Yeah.
To have active wrestlers walking around with belts of a promotion that, like, I went to a Global Force Wrestling show at a ballpark.
I remember
locally,
that. I remember that.
It was terrible. It was terrible. I said it was one of the worst live shows I've ever been to as a wrestling fan. It was just poorly organized. They did no public relation, no promotion, nothing for it. And then, like, there was no television deal. They taped all this TV. Actually, when I was in Ireland and we did shows together, they were just starting to tape Global Force Wrestling stuff in, like, Las Vegas. None of that footage has seen the light of day. And all this talent that Jeff Jarrett had under contract or under deals or whatever they were, they're all gone. Like the Bollywood Boys or the Singh brothers now in the WWE. They had, like, Bobby Roode and Eric Young and a bunch of guys. Those guys have all gone to WWE under NXT. Like, I had this idea that he started this promotion, and it wasn't even really a promotion because nothing really took off the way he was trying to make it take off. He was just co-promoting with all these other promotions, and then to just kind of like ham-fist it into the Impact, world is just so silly. Like, the fact that Alberto El Patron's the GFW champion, like, yes, we're going to integrate the titles. It's a little. I'm glad they're going to be done with it after the show in 2 weeks, which is nice, but. Otherwise, it's just been really, really silly.
It's trying to go for the Invasion 2001 kind of feel, but instead of having companies that actually existed and meant something, they have Global Force Wrestling, which the greatest thing Global Force Wrestling ever did was when they opened people's eyes to Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, that was a positive.
That was great, but after that, it was kind of just like, it was like a fart in church, Nobody wants to talk about it.
That was the co-promotion trick, though. And I saw what Jeff was doing, and I talked to him about this in person. And when I did try to deviate the conversation to that, he quickly did his Jeff Jarrett political thing, which he's very good at. And I told him in person, you should run for office if this whole wrestling thing doesn't work out, because he's very, very smart and tactical when he talks to people.
He is, yeah.
You know this because you've interviewed him many times, so you know what I'm talking about. But it was weird. Like, he was just. I mean, people have said much meaner things than what I'm saying right now. A lot of people have accused of him, just being the creator of endless Ponzi schemes in the wrestling industry. I don't know if I would go that far, but he's definitely done things to continue to keep himself, somewhat relevant in the wrestling industry.
That's true.
But and again, when I found out he was coming back and he was bringing in the people that were there before, I was in full support of it, and I still am. I just haven't seen a lot to indicate that much is going to change if they are continuing to be on Pop TV. Like, if they're just staying on Pop TV and they're going to still try to make a dent, it's not going to work. Now, granted, they're getting back into live events this summer, so that's good, because for a while there, for 2 years, all TNA did before the rebranding to Impact Wrestling was tape television for Pop TV or Destination America or whatever channel they were on at the time, and produced, a couple pay-per-views a year. I mean, there would be the one night only specials, and then like maybe 2 shows a year, like Slammiversary and Bound for Glory, and that was it. So they really were just like a production company that happened to call themselves a wrestling, company. But they're getting back into touring, which is good. Obviously, there's a lot of cost cutting going on right now. They're owned by Anthem Sports and Entertainment, which is a Canadian-based company which owns the Fight Network. And of course, there's the elephant in the room, Darragh. I'm sure you've been watching it and paying attention. The dispute between Impact and the Hardys over the trademark and copyrights of the Broken characters, and that was a big mess. And
that's still a mess.
So it's still a mess to this day. So there's aspects of things moving in the right direction, and then there's other things that you're just like, wow, it's just we're still doing this, But I do feel like they're on a better track than they were a year ago, even 2 or 3 years ago.
Definitely. But like Adam, I don't know how TNA survived. I don't know how we got here. Like 2 or 3 years ago, look, last year before Anthem bought them, I don't know what happened. To be honest with you, the place was just a mess. As you said, they let contracts go. The show made absolutely no sense. People weren't talking about what was happening on television. They were talking about what was happening backstage. That was all the news was about. Nobody cared about the television show. And that's the truth of it. And what I will have to say, and even, people backstage, they were either kept in the dark or gone. And that's something I later found out, that a lot of the backstage people were gone completely, or just didn't know what was going on, because the things that got so bad there that cost-cutting measures were taken in, and it was just an absolute cluster. So now, as soon as the Anthem deal was done, and as soon as it changed over, a lot of the old, on this side of the fence, Adam, a lot of the people in the UK got back in touch with me, and now it feels like TNA was a good couple of years ago. So I do think when this is done, this pay-per-view is done, and maybe the end of the year, around the time of Bound for Glory, I think they'll have a much more concise and firm picture of who they are and what they want to be. But there's the card is very reminiscent of what it was 2007, 2006. The way it's structured, the way it's set up, a bit too many gimmicky matches, but I will have to say it's I'm looking forward to it for everything except the main event. I just wish TNA or Impact Wrestling would resist that kind of hard-coded thing that they do, where they kind of go to live off past WWE gimmicks, because that hurts them and it just makes them look lower end. But I will have to say, anything with Scott Steiner in it, sign me up, because that guy is just man, it's amazing.
I think the message was sent very clearly to them after that first show, where they basically showed footage and had people cut promos about how great the company used to be, and people were like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I think that message was sent very, very clearly to them, that let's stop doing that stuff and let's just focus on what is at hand, what we're trying to present and put together. And you can't take over a company the way they did and expect, instant positive results within, 3 to 4 or 5 months. I mean, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first of many shows where you're going to see them trying to, like you were saying, get into the mode and get into the story they're trying to tell. But unfortunately, and I think they know this too, that if they continue to stay on Pop, and I don't even know what other option would be available outside of a Pop TV. I'm sure that Jeff Jarrett saw what slim pickings what it was, and when I spoke to Jeff about 2 years ago, it must have been 2 years ago, it was right as GFW was starting a tour. But any kind of a discussion about getting a television deal or getting something with like cable.
Yeah, he told me the same thing. Told me the same
thing.
Yeah,
he told you the same thing. It wasn't a priority, and I think he saw the growth of the network, and maybe that's where they go from here. Honestly, I think doing something with like a Netflix would be hugely beneficial to them. Whether or not Netflix would be open to that is another thing. And maybe even doing kind of like a seasonal approach, the way Lucha Underground does it, would be something interesting. And now that's also on Netflix too. But I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a different way you can approach this. It doesn't have to be a week-to-week show. I don't know, but they got to figure something out, because if they're still on Pop TV a year from now while we're having the conversation, then that just shows to me that the progression's just not there, and they're going to continue to be a very low-level wrestling promotion that has, some people paying attention to it, but overall is not making much of a dent at all in the industry.
Because remember, they do have to kind of deal with Ring of Honor as well. And one of the things that they really should do and look into is kind of repairing those bridges that were burned under the Dixie Carter latter years. Look at all the guys who were in the Best in the World pay-per-view, which was fantastic. The Bucks, Daniels, Cody Rhodes, even Bully Ray, the Briscoes, Kaz, Jay Lethal, all these were TNA guys for the most part. These were guys made in TNA, and things got so bad that they are now off. Not in WWE, over in Ring of Honor. So I think they might eventually go back into that. And to be honest with you, that would be a much better pay-per-view, a Ring of Honor Impact show like they used to do back in 2005, 2006. And I think that's, something that would be growth for them. But the reality is as well, they need to not look at old guys, need to not look at, let's try and get the next AJ Styles. Because even AJ Styles, when he was in TNA, was saying, well, look, I'm not the next anybody, I'm AJ Styles. They need to focus on getting new guys, building their stars, and holding on to them. But, repairing bridges is not a bad thing to do, and that's what I'd say would be a good bit of growth for Impact Wrestling. But, fair play to Ring of Honor. I've only seen the Cody Rhodes, Christopher Daniels match, which, Adam, I know you don't like the flippy-dippy stuff, but it's quite a good match.
If it's presented in a way that makes sense to me, then I don't hate it. When I would see a lot of Ring of Honor matches where guys were just, and to be honest, it wasn't stuff that was happening in the main event matches. It was more of the opening matches, trying to keep people's attention. Is where I would kind of be like, well, there's just no context to why they're doing that many flips and dives, but that is a definite. It's a niche product. That is, Ring of Honor has always been independent, focused on a certain demographic of a wrestling fan, and they know that, and they're not trying to be the WWE. That is the one thing I've always truly respected about Ring of Honor, is they've never tried to pretend to be somebody that they're not.
Yes.
And that is the one mistake that TNA made right when they got on Spike TV, and to a degree still make the same mistake to this day, is trying to be too much like the WWE or try to overtake that or give this sense of like, yes, we are as important as what the WWE is doing. In reality, they're not. And that is the one thing Ring of Honor has been very smart about. And regardless of who owned the company or who was making decisions, they were always very cognizant of that, of being very cautious of portraying themselves as that. So they do that very well. And you see why certain talents will go there, like a Bully Ray or a Cody Rhodes, why they'll make that decision to work for Ring of Honor over an Impact. So it's interesting. And obviously I think Ring of Honor has a stronger product and a more stronger advantage over Impact right now.
Definitely,
more so because of the New Japan Pro Wrestling partnership they have with the Bullet Club stuff, and the fact that New Japan's coming to the United States this summer. So I've always viewed Ring of Honor honestly as the number 2 promotion stateside. Maybe not in the whole world. Obviously New Japan would be the number 2. If you were to rank it, but I've always put them above Impact, especially in the last 5 years, just because as soon as TNA lost that Spike TV deal,
they were done.
It changed the game. Yeah, it just changed the whole game.
But the thing about it is as well, like obviously we're an Irish product, to a lesser extent a UK based product as well, and over here, Impact Wrestling is still number 2, still.
Yeah. And that's because of the Sky Sports. That's not Sky Sports anymore. What's the television outlet that airs them now?
It's Challenge.
It's Challenge. That's right. Yeah, because they lost Challenge. Actually, there was that moment where they lost Challenge and they had to distribute that UK exclusive TNA app.
Yeah. That was exactly. The backlash on that thing was. That's one thing that I was kind of annoyed we weren't doing the show then, because. Like, you want to talk about a dumpster fire, that's like the definition of a dumpster fire. That thing was just a mess, and that shows you how bad it got, but like Ring of Honor doesn't have the penetration as Impact does here and in the UK, and New Japan doesn't either, which is crazy. So there is still room for Impact to grow, and we are going to map it here because it's, as I said, it's the number 2 here, but the wrestling world is interesting, and there are 4 players here, and it's kind of it's interesting to see how they're all kind of merging together. But I think the Ring of Honor model is a lot more sustainable. And look, in the face of everything else, they've survived through a recession. They survived through being raided by TNA and WWE, and they're still around. Fair play to them.
Yeah, they're still doing. I mean, obviously Sinclair Broadcasting was a big savior for them because things were getting a little scary there for a while. But then you could say the same thing about Impact. I mean, back in October, there was a fear that the promotion was going to be done and that Bound for Glory wasn't even going to happen.
Yeah.
So, with the Billy Corgan stuff and then eventually the lawsuits and then Anthem getting involved. So it's an interesting time. The WWE is still finding to be profitable. Maybe not the way they were profitable in the Attitude Era, but they're still turning a profit and people are still paying for the network, and Impact and Ring of Honor are still trying to figure out ways to, get people to pay for their stuff.
And, hopefully things will get better for them. And I think they will. They've turned a corner there because, man, I've never seen a company run so badly in my life. And the worst part is when you would speak to Dixie, you'd be like, oh, yeah, this is great. And then when you'd read what was going on, and particularly the Billy Corgan stuff, you're like, yeah, things are not good. So They did turn the corner, and I'm actually looking forward to Slammiversary this year, which I wasn't last year. So you guys will be watching it, and you guys will be reviewing it live. Are you going to do the live review kind of thing, or are you going to come on afterwards?
I don't know. I mean, we asked the question, and some people said yeah, and some people said, so we're going to do like a poll and just see, because I'm going to be covering the show live regardless on WrestleView. But I was curious if people, because that's the other thing too, is the irrelevancy of the TNA product now, the Impact product. I mean, it definitely, I mean, even in the later years of that Spike TV run where they were just about to leave Spike, I mean, he was starting to really nosedive.
Yeah.
And now it's like, and I can see it. And again, WrestleView should not be the barometer for measuring, what's successful and not successful. But I see when we distribute WWE content, and I see when we distribute Impact content, and there is a massive difference in the amount of people that pay attention to Impact Wrestling stuff. And granted, it's hard to compare them directly to the WWE, but the interest level is just not there.
No.
So I mean, we'll be covering the show live because it's one of the few pay-per-views they do live, throughout the year. And I'm not sure if we're going to be doing a review, but we'll keep you posted.
Cool. And guys, remember, if you want to keep in touch with Adam and with WrestleView, go over to WrestleView.com. Check them out there as well. Adam, where are your live feeds held?
We hold them on YouTube. So if you just look up WrestleView on YouTube or go to youtube.com/WrestleView Radio, and we broadcast them live as we do it, and then the video gets archived automatically. Then we also put out the podcast version on iTunes and SoundCloud as well.
Cool. So guys, do check that out. We're coming to the end of the show here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, but we are going to hold over on our own website because we have to quickly talk about Money in the Bank, and we haven't got time here as well. Guys, remember, if you want to join us directly, you can go over to our website, which is wvdesk/site.firebaseapp.com, or of course you can go and join us on Facebook, WrestleView International Desk, and on YouTube, WViDesk 2016. So Adam, I want to thank you so much for talking with me, and have you got your social media details there?
Absolutely, and it was very fun to podcast with you and also be on fancy radio broadcasting airwaves in Dublin, Ireland. So thank you, sir.
No worries, man. We have to do it more often, and I have to get better at doing it because I'm kind of rusty. The ring rust is there, I have to say.
It'll come back to you. And yes, I totally agree. We need to do this more often.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Tune in next week here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, the WrestleView International Desk. We'll talk to you
You're
then.
listening to Phoenix FM, community radio for Dublin 15.